disengage comes through.
They're gonna head on
Phoenix
out,
fell.
maybe Captain Twig has something else to answer.
Am I saying nerf bulwark? I am, yeah. It is too strong. Damage onto SOT, he will beads. Big man just disengages himself, running, being chased. Still has his Book of the Dead to be procced, and there it is. Look at all that health that he's still got. And he's got a Kepriel to boot. There's just, what are you supposed to do? How do you kill him?
He's gonna have to use everything he's got to try.
Look at this shot! Look at the shields! What?
Soak up as much damage as they can to help him out. SOT now.
I can't believe they have 2 Night Cults!
Instantly to try and break out a stone shield from inbound.
Oh, great jump in variety. Harry Cummings coming in my mouth.
Still in the middle of every.
Hey everybody. As you may have surmised, this is a video about shields and about the shielding mechanic in Smite. It is, I think, something that's been on the rise as of late and something that's been more powerful. And yeah, you might have noticed it a lot in the competitive meta these days. I mean, we've had Nike, Geb, Odin, Pridwin, most recently Book of the Dead, really all rise and be very popular in the SPL meta as of late. Part of that is just their general kits and how good the items are. Pridwin and Bulwark, super strong items. But I wanted to talk a little bit about why shields are such a strong mechanic in Smite and why a god like Nike with her ult is so powerful, and just some things about shields that you might not know or might not have thought about with regards to playing around them and the competitive meta and why they're so strong. So I guess we'll start with the first thing is the counterplay for shields. The counterplay for shields, we got 2 main things. There is a third thing I'm going to touch on as well. So the 2 main counters for shields come from your relic slots, and they are Ankh and Sunder. So the problem with relics countering shields a lot of the times is the cooldown of those relics. I mean, if you think about the cooldown of an Ankh in comparison to a cooldown of a Geb shield, or Sunder in comparison to a cooldown of a Geb shield, it's not particularly close. The other thing is Sunder is not that strong of a relic in my opinion. It's not that good. I mean, the fact that it's not strong enough to be picked up into Nike when she's strong in the meta shows you a lot, like supports and other roles preferring other relics. And I guess the second thing is carries can't really get Sunder or Ankh. They need to have beads and Aegis in most games to be able to survive the dive from assassins and the CC from solo laners and from supports and even mage damage. You know, you just kind of need beads and Aegis. You can't get by without them in a lot of games. There are games where you can, but the majority of games you've got to go beads Aegis. So that means that carries can't really pick it up. And then when the carries don't have something like the Sunder or the Ankh, it's awkward to apply it to a lot of these diving. I mean, the main one is Nike, but all these diving solo laners with their Pridwins and their Bulwarks, it's hard to get rid of those shields, and it's hard to play around them as a carry player, and it means that, for example, when you're playing against the Nike, you might have to position totally differently in a team fight as a support or as a solo laner who happens to have picked up the anti-shield stuff. You know, it's a problem when you have to totally change up the sort of composition of your team fight because of that one mechanic being there, which is why a god like Nike is so strong and forces people to play so differently in team fights. So yeah, those are the 2 main counterplays. I guess the other one you can talk about is executes. Executes do not take into account shield health when they're looking at their execute threshold. So say Thanatos has a 40% execute. If you've got 38% health, but you've got a shield for 40% of your health, you can still be executed, even though you've got 78% of your health. That is the way that shields, I guess, the way they function with health can be a disadvantage, but it can also be a pretty significant advantage, seeing as they don't count towards your max health. They don't get affected by Kins, they don't get affected by Soul Reaver, they don't get affected by E-Staff, which it means that they have percent health damage becomes a big counter to tanks later on in the game, alongside percent pen. So percent health damage and percent pen become big counters to tanks as the game goes on, which makes shields a very effective form of tankiness the later the game goes on, because they're not being affected by that Reaver, they're not being affected by Shard, they're not being affected by Kins, they're not being affected by Nemesis ult doing percent health damage. You know, none of that is happening to the shield health. The shield health, it don't care. It don't care about your percent health damage. You just continue doing the same damage with your Kins. So yeah, another thing about shields that you might not know, you probably have noticed this, or it's happened to you, it's affected you in some way, is that you cannot lifesteal from shields. So hunters out there sitting there with their devos, and I guess this is another way you counter tank dive, is you build Assy, for example, on a hunter. Maybe you have devos stacked up, maybe you have Bancroft's Talon alongside a Typhon's Fang. All of that lifesteal, none of it works on shields. Shields are, as you auto them down, you don't lifesteal, you're not lifestealing from it. So that's another reason that they're a really strong mechanic into dive, because they counter another form of they're a really strong mechanic while diving, sorry, because they counter another form of like defense for the carries, in that they can survive this night diving them because they have an assy proc and they out heal the damage that's coming out, so you don't get finished off by just the night. But when the shield's up, you ain't lifestealing and you ain't surviving, so you end up going down. So that's another thing which makes shields particularly strong. I think that's about it with my facts on shields, but I guess you just gotta consider the difference between Cthulhu ult and Nike ult and the different counters that you have for each. So Nike ult, you've got Ankin Sunder and Executes, I suppose, are the three things you can look at. It's 40% max HP on the shield. Cthulhu, 25%, plus 25% max HP is given to him in his ult, but it's not in a shield, it's a form of extra health. And so he's just so much more counterable. The Kins, the Reaver, they do more to him. The like things like Sunder still affect him still pretty good to buy into him, despite the fact that he's not getting a health shield. You just shred through him, blow him up, although I don't think anybody's building building Sunder these days. I just think the counters to shields are pretty inaccessible in the comp meta right now, and that's why we've seen such a rise of all of the above, really, of Nike, Geb, Odin, Pridwin, Book of the Dead. Book of the Dead's getting a slight nerf in the next patch. I can't remember who's all getting. I think Nike might be getting nerfed. I think, are Geb and Odin getting nerfed too? But everything's seeing nerfs, but it won't detract from the strength of shields. I think it would be cool, personally, to maybe see some more counterplay for shields. Maybe like an item that you can build into them, or maybe having them start counting towards your max HP for the purpose of things like Kins and Reaver or an E-Staff or something like that. Or maybe we just need to tone down the shields that are in the game, because I definitely think that, like Nike ult, for example, I know it's her kind of identity, but it's just a little bit too strong. It's a little bit too strong. 40% of your max HP as a shield is very, very powerful for all of the above reasons. I hope that made sense. I hope that wasn't too bulwark of copium from me just saying shields are OP. And I hope you learned something from this video, and maybe it'll make you play a little bit different into shields in the future. Now you know. Now you know that yeah, they're difficult to counter. Very difficult to counter, I think. Hopefully we see them fall off a little bit in the meta. I'm bored of Nike, personally. I don't really mind Geb. Odin gets banned all the time. Not fun to play against. I'll give him that. I think Book of the Dead's okay. I don't think it's necessarily as OP as some people might think. I think it's definitely strong. And I think it's an interesting thing to have in the meta, though, Book of the Dead. I was expecting more of an awful healing meta at the playoffs, and it didn't come through, but we did see a lot of hell bans and quite a few Afro bans as well. So maybe there was an awful hell meta. It just didn't really materialize because of the way teams were banning. But the winning team, Tara's Titans, their mid laner Paul was not building the Book of the Dead build. So definitely still other mage builds are viable, and it's seeing a slight nerf. So not so worried about that, but just thought it was ripe time. It was ripe time for this kind of thing after the playoffs. Talking about shields, Book of the Dead, before it gets nerfed. Get my complaints in quick, before it's perfectly balanced. But yeah, that's gonna be it from me. I've been meaning to record this video for a while. It's taken me a bit to get it done. I meant to do it last night. I had a headache. I don't know why I didn't do it the night before, but I've finally gotten there. Hopefully get this edit up and get a few clips added in so you can see the mechanics I'm talking about. But that's going to be it from me. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.